Well, welcome to practice, everybody. We'll begin as we settle in. Let our minds start to settle down in our meditation before our practice. It's been a busy day outside, and now's the time to wipe the business away, to be here, present, and let go of all of our ruminations of the past, because the past only exists in what got us to here. Let go of all of our anxieties of the future, because the future only exists in what we can do here and now with our practice. So we'll let the mind quiet down. And bring our attention to our breathing. Just notice how it feels to breathe every breath of air today. Many meditation teachers will teach you how to use a mantra to direct your mind and attention. You can use words. You can say, "May I be well. May I be peaceful. May I be calm. May I be happy." You can also attribute the meanings of those words into our breathing without focusing so much on the language of saying words, but just feeling well by breathing, by changing how you perceive your breath. It's a powerful thing to realize that you can breathe in a way that nourishes your body, that provides you energy to every muscle and tendon that needs it in this moment. It provides energy to calm the mind in exactly the way the mind needs to be calmed as we settle in, settle down, become very intentional about every little movement. Take with us a sense of gratitude for every breath of air we are gifted to be alive. And throughout this practice, I'd like to set the intention to find the most subtle qualities of our breathing, give the most attention to the most subtle form of energy that channels throughout the body with every in-breath, bringing us the power that we need to move our muscles into these forms. And throughout every exhale, noticing the intention to release, to open, to flow, to let go of anything that's been holding us down throughout our day. We can become free through breathing into the motions of our practice. We'll bring that intention with us as we bring our hands to our heart. Let's practice an Om together. Everyone can sing along. Take a deep in-breath with me. Feel our intentions come to life. Let's place our hands onto the mat in front of us. We're going to find a kneeling position to begin with. Hips above our knees. Let's actually sink our hips between the heels, letting our heels come to the sides, finding a gentle hero's pose as we lengthen our spine. We're going to start with our arms out, expanding, and finding our cow face arms with the right hand behind the head, the left hand behind the back, Not pushing it, just finding where the arms can naturally go. Trying to keep the shoulder and the elbow in line on each side. As we take a breath into the mid-back. And another. And our exhale, release. Bring our arms out long. And switching sides. Right hand behind the back, the left hand behind the head. Not forcing the fingers to touch, just finding where they naturally fall. And grabbing the back as we open the heart. And take a deep in-breath all the way down to the lower back. Noticing where the breath goes. Letting each exhale loosen the shoulder. And we'll release our hands. Bring our arms out into cactus. As we bring our shoulder blades together and pull them down onto the back, so that our back muscles are engaged and our core muscles are pulling our rib in. And feel how we can fire up the center of our body. We'll bring our hands down in front of us and maintain that core and the back muscles with the shoulders. As we find our first downward facing dog. Noticing how it feels to bring those shoulders further onto the back, engaging the shoulder blades together. As we exhale the heart to our toes and lift the tailbone behind us. Letting your hamstrings loosen up. Maybe pedaling out the feet, loosen up the ankles. Squeezing those hands together. As we step forwards to the top of the mat. Grabbing our elbows, letting the neck release. And you can nod yes and no as you release any tension in the neck. Lifting the tailbone behind us as we exhale and bow. And then hinging from the hips, we're going to rise up. Growing tall, lifting as tall as you've been yet today. Bringing our hands to our heart. Finding a strong and solid mountain pose. Starting from the foundation. Noticing our feet solid on the mat. The legs strong, so we're lifting the calves. Feeling those shoulder blades down onto the back, and see if you can find your plank pose in the mountain pose. How engaged the front body and the back body can become. And keeping the back flat, we're going to bow forward, just moving slowly. Bringing the tailbone behind us. Finding an L. And then exhaling our hands to our feet. We're going to take a simple sun salutation as we step into our plank pose. We're going to hold the plank for a moment. As we notice our mountain pose here, our flat back, keeping the hands pulling towards the feet and the feet pulling towards the hand as though you're trying to buckle the mat between them. The neck in line with the spine. And we'll keep the side body long as our elbows grace the sides as we slowly lower down into our chaturanga. And lift the heart into a cobra. Taking a very low cobra at first. Start with our cobras very low, so our heart can just hover, and you notice the back muscles, the lower back, engage, and the core protecting the back. Our Savasana A. can happen with our hands at the sides of our hips as we open into a slight back bend. Bringing our hands down beneath the shoulders into Savasana B, Cobra. And exhaling back into our downward facing dog, Ardha Mukha Shavasana. Peeling out the feet, pushing through the fingertips and behind the knuckles. Bring your tailbone tall and look at your belly button. See if that helps to bring those shoulder blades onto the back. After our 5th breath, we're going to walk forwards to our forward fold and bow. Inhaling to hinge from the hips and rise tall. With our hands to our hearts. We're going to test our balance here. Our classical sun salutation, the balance modified version. So bring the right heel to lift in our standing balance. Finding stability here. Reaching our hands overhead as we slowly bring that foot out behind us. We're going to set it down as slowly as possible, setting it down into a low lunge. Bring our hands down to the mat. As you bring the back knee down to the mat. Square the hips. So bring the left hip down. The right hip pulls up and forwards. The ribs pull into the core. We're warming up the hips here. Our middle fingers can reach for the mat beneath us. And notice how that pulls the outsides of the shoulders, those muscles engage as we lengthen those arms. We want long, straight, strong arms. We're going to exhale down to bow and frame that left foot, lifting the right knee off the mat, stepping that left foot back, finding our plank. Let's test our 3-legged plank, lifting the right hand up and forwards. Finding our stability, setting it back down, and lifting the left hand up and forwards. Finding a stability, and setting it down at the exhale. Lifting that right foot, just testing each limb. Finding your stability on any combination of them as you switch to the left foot, lifted up behind us. We'll set that foot back down, bringing our knees and chest and chin to the mat, keeping the tailbone lifted. Our inchworm pose. Your heart between your hands, so you're opening up the low back. This is more of a passive back bend. And you can bring your heart through the hands and find your cobra. I'm going to take a little cobra push-up, if you dare. Finding our high cobra and slowly exhaling down to the low cobra. Keeping those elbows tight at the sides and pushing through the fingertips as we find our high cobra and our up dog, lifting the legs off the mat on the toes. And then rolling over the toes, finding our downward facing dog. Pedaling up the feet. Exhaling the heart to the toes. Finding our stability. We're going to lift the right foot out behind us. And step that right foot forward between the hands. Finding a low lunge. Anjaneyasana prayer. Keeping those shoulder blades pulling them away from the earlobes and behind the ears as we keep our arms strong and reaching them for the mat beneath us, keeping the ribs pulled tight into the core. And keeping the back muscles engaged while we bow with a flat back, opening that hip. And then bringing the hands down to frame that right foot, lifting that left foot up and off the mat, maybe a standing split. As we bring our hands to our heart and our left knee into our standing balance, testing our balance, finding a sense of stability, curling our hands overhead, and back to a standing mountain pose. Beginning to feel warm, so we can begin our vinyasa practice as we inhale to grow tall, lifting as tall as we are, and exhale to bow. We're going to take a sun salutation B with a few modified forearm planks. Starting with our chair pose, Utkatasana, bending the knees, keeping the knees just over the heels, engage the toes up and off of the mat, opening those shoulder blades onto the back. So take the shoulders, pull them back, and pull them lower, and then reach up. And feel how the side body engages, and maintain that as we squeeze the hands together and bring the hands to our heart, bouncing our hips. We're going to bring the left elbow over to the right. You can use your right hand to give yourself a little leverage to find the prayer twist. And we're going to exhale into the twist. Inhale to lengthen the spine and look up. And then exhale to twist a little bit deeper, keeping those hips low. And inhaling as we unhook and come back to center, bouncing our hips, refinding that shoulder action. And we're going to cross that right elbow over to the left. Try to keep those toes up and off the mat. Inhale to lengthen the spine. Exhale to twist. And inhale back to center. Bringing our hands overhead and bowing as we straighten the knees. Give those quads a break. Lifting the tailbone up behind us and pushing our weight into our hands as we step, hop, or jump back into our plank. We're going to start with our plank with those elbows tight at the sides and the fingertips pushing into the mat. We're going to take a very slow chaturanga. See if you can move with me for a chaturanga. Bringing our heart all the way to the mat and releasing the hands to our sides. Opening up into our Savasana A, the locust pose. This time we can lift our feet as we find the back bend. Maybe binding the hands behind the back and feeling those shoulder blades come together as you point your fingers and reach towards your heels. Exhaling back to center. Bring our hands beneath the shoulders, keeping those shoulder blades in that same action we felt there as we lift ourselves into our cobra, using as much core and back muscle as we did in Savasana A to lift yourself up in Savasana B. Try to use as much core and back muscle to lift yourself up as you use arm muscles here. And we'll tuck our toes behind us and push back into our downward facing dog. Pedaling out those feet.
we're going to raise the right foot out behind us, lifting it up as high as it goes. You can bend the knee and stack the hips, trying to get those hips directly on top of one another as the heel comes into the glute. And try to keep the shoulders square as we find the twist. And exhale to straighten that leg, lifting it up behind us. And then inhale that foot forwards between the hands, coming up into our high lunge. Back toes on the mat, hips square, shoulder blades on the back, and hands lift up. Feeling the heart open, pulling the feet together, left hip forwards. Let's bring the left hand forwards and the right hand back, finding a twist. The left hand can come down to the inside of the right foot, lifting that right hand up and overhead, finding our simple twist. And breathing into that right hip as it opens up. I'm going to bring the left hip forwards and push that right hip down. And bring the right hand to the right hip. And place your weight on the left hand. Spin your left foot flat as you step that foot back and side. You can also just step back if that's more accessible. Finding our side plank. From here, we'll bring our hands down into our plank. Finding a normal plank. And coming onto our forearms. As we bring the elbows just beneath the shoulders. Pushing our weight into the hands and forearms. And feeling the core pull together. Coming up onto our tippy toes. And we're going to walk our tippy toes forwards into a dolphin pose. And you try to bring the hips above your shoulders, getting as high as you can. And then we'll walk those toes back into our forearm plank. Taking a breath here. We'll bring our knees to the mat and find a child's pose as we release those muscles. Tucking our toes behind us and lifting up into our downward facing dog toward the other side. Lifting the left foot up as high as we can. We can bend the knee and stack those hips, trying to get those hips perpendicular to the mat as you keep your shoulders square. So try to bring your left shoulder a little bit more forwards to keep it in line with the right while you stack those hips. Then we can straighten the leg, square the hips again, lift that heel a few inches higher, push the weight into the hands, bring the knee into the chest, and step that left foot forwards between the hands, finding our high lunge. Hips come square, shoulders onto the back. Grow our hands overhead. And keep the ribs knitted into the core. It's really easy to lose the action in the upper core. But then we lose some of that side body strength that holds our shoulders in line. So when we found our stability, we're going to bring the right hand forwards and the left hand back, finding our twist. Breathing into that left hip. And the right hand can come down to the inside of that foot. Left hand overhead. Finding that hip, pushing that left hip down and lifting that right hip in line. You can bring the left hand to to the left hip. Push the weight onto the right hand. See if you can step back, however you get there. Finding our side plank. Noticing again the muscles on the side, outsides of the shoulders, pushing down to the mat. Very good. Kickstand is just as good. Let's bring our hands into our plank. Finish up our vinyasa. Take one full chaturanga. Finding all the way down. Finding any variation of cobra or up dog that fits your practice. Rolling over the toes and finding our downward facing dog. And taking this resting pose with 5 full breaths. Noticing that subtle energy that comes in with every breath of air. It feeds the body all the energy you need. And your perception of your breathing can empower you with strength you didn't know you had. It's a really amazing thing to just breathe with full awareness of every breath and what it does. Let's step our feet forwards, finding our forward fold. And we'll bow. We can look up. Ardha Uttanasana. A little back bend here. And exhaling to bow. We have one more chair pose. Bear with me. Bend the knees. Lift our hands over our head. And this time we'll bring our hands out to airplane, opening the heart. Bring the hands behind the back, binding them as we bring the shoulder blades and the back muscles together, opening that heart and bowing into our half chair pose. Letting those hips sink as low as you like. And exhaling to release the bind. Straighten the legs, come to stand tall. We'll bring our hands to our heart. The hands dangle. We'll shake it out. Take the water, I like the windmill pose. You can notice how the windmill kind of loosens the shoulders and the spine under their own weight. And let the arms come to dangle at their own pace, to a pause. Find a moment of stillness. Give yourself a particularly rewarding breath of air. You've earned it. We're going to see if you can stand from the wall like that. Kick distance from the wall. I'm going to face forwards to start with. Leg distance. So we're going to start with our warrior 3, bringing that right leg into our standing balance. Stepping it back out behind us. That foot comes to the wall. We can lift that heel as high as feels comfortable, trying to get it about hip distance as the heart comes parallel to the mat. Our hands can be at our heart, or out in airplane, or over our head. We can exhale and bow into our standing split. We're going to bring that right foot down so it's just beneath the baseboard, lifting up into a warrior two. That back hand on the wall. We're going to use this wall as our support when we get to our half moon poses. Until then, reverse the warrior, open the side body, breathe all the way into the left kidney, and exhale out to warrior two, bending the elbow, finding side angle pose. We start with the hand open, the elbow over the leg. And when your foundation feels strong, bring that left hand to the inside of the foot or to a block. Feeling that hip become open. And then you're going to bring the left hand to the outside of that left foot. The right hand comes to the hip. We're going to find our half moon, so the left hand comes outside the little toe and about a foot in front of it. The back foot can be on the wall for your support. Finding our half moon and not collapsing into that side body, keeping that side body strong. That looks good, Cynthia, keeping those hips stacked. Finding our stability here. Maybe staying here. Maybe finding a revolved half moon. You can bring the right hand to the inside of the left foot and lift the left hand up. You can stay in a half moon if that's your practice. I always like the challenge of trying to keep the arms in airplane the whole time we revolve.
The wall makes all things possible.
Yes.
It does help. Let's bring our hands down in front of the foot for our standing splits. And that back foot can step forwards. And we'll bow. Coming up to a stand. And step onto the toes. Loosen up those toes that help keep us into our balance. Find our stability onto that right foot. As you bend the left knee to our chest. Finding our standing balance. Standing tall. Moving as slowly as possible as we bring the left heel behind us, trying to keep it as high as the hips, keeping the heart parallel to the mat. Finding our stability here and feeling what this feels like, and we'll remember what this feels like when we return to it. You can bring that left foot down to the baseboard, mat. Find our warrior two. Bringing that right knee just above the heel. Finding our full wingspan. Flipping the palm. Reverse the warrior. Here you can bring the hand to the wall. Try to walk it down the wall as you open up that side body, keeping the obliques strong on the left side, not letting that collapse. And then using the core to lift yourself back up into warrior two. Bending the elbow, finding side angle. Shoulder blade plugged into the back. If you're not sure where it is, you can bring it in and then reach forwards. Looking up at the hand above you, bringing the right hand down to a block or to the inside of the foot. Keeping that right hip open. Pulling it into the center. You can bring that right hand to the outside of the right foot. The left hand can come to the hip. You can bring that hand out and in front of the little toe. Maybe using the wall as your balance point. Finding our half moon, ardha chandrasana. Opening those shoulders and stacking them on top of one another. See if you can keep your arms in a perfect airplane as you revolve. Finding the revolved half moon and bowing into that hamstring when you get there. Keeping that right heel engaged as you're flexing the foot against the wall. And we'll find our half moon. Exhaling both hands down to in front of the foot. And bring our feet back together. We'll exhale and bow. Inhale, rising up tall. Hands to our heart. Release our toes. Take this moment to breathe and find our stability on both of our feet. A moment of gratitude for having 2 feet. Makes life so much easier. We're gonna bow, putting our hands to the mat, stepping, hopping, or jumping into our plank pose, however you would like to get there. We're gonna bring our knees to the mat, finding thread the needle as we reach the right hand overhead and the left heel out behind us. That right hand comes out to the right. The left heel comes out to the left. And we'll bring the back of the right hand behind the left wrist, underneath, coming onto the side of the head. You can bend the heel into the glute. See if you can bring your left hand to grab the top of the foot and add a quad stretch. Any variation of thread the needle. You don't have to add the quad stretch. Right here is just as good for the shoulder. Very good. Awesome. All right, we got one of us doing it in table. It was great. We had thread the needle, very good. And roly-poly pose?
Roly-poly.
All right, that's what it is now. Let's even it out to the other side. Whatever you did before, make it symmetrical. Finding your stability. The trick here is the foundation is strong. So keep those left toes pushing into the mat. Then bring the back of the left hand onto the mat and push into all 5 fingers, the shoulder, and use that arm for your stability.
I don't even try.
You can just stay right here.
I can't stay.
Any variation, even just threading the needle in our tabletop here. Just opening our shoulder. You had it. All right, when we're even, we'll unwind. We'll take a simple sleepy pigeon pose with that right heel behind the left wrist. Bowing into the hip. Exhaling to release those hips closer to the mat. Sleepy pigeon is one of those poses you have to relax into the pose. The more you release the muscles, the deeper you'll find, the more open you'll find your hips. So with each exhale, just loosen up any loose tension in those legs. When our hips feel open, come up onto our hands. You can stay there in sleepy pigeon if you like. If you'd like the challenge, and lift ourselves up. Bend the back foot and reach for it. Find what works for your practice. You can either reach for it with the hand, or we got a little bit of a mermaid action we're working towards over there. Very good. You can try one side and then try the opposite arm for an even more challenge. There you go. You get a little more across the back stretch there. Let's release. And bow. Bringing that foot back into a dog as we pedal out our feet. And switch sides. So the left ankle behind the right wrist. Finding the form. And release, bowing into the hip. Finding our stability with those hips square. Giving yourself the patience it takes to let go of any stress that we hold in our hips. It's actually very common for us to hold tension and anxieties in our hips. Here we can let that go. The more we release, the lower we can melt to the mat. And you can either stay here or take the challenge. Coming up onto our hands. Lifting up with the hands to the heart. You can bend that right knee and reach for the top of the foot. Taking any variation. Either here, just grabbing the foot, or here. Finding whatever you need to even it out to the other side. And then release, bowing. We can tuck those toes behind us and step back into our dog. This time we're gonna raise that right foot up and step it forwards between the hands, finding another side angle pose. The hand on the inside of the foot. And from here, we'll bring our hands, both hands, to the inside of the foot as we bow the shoulder underneath the leg. In our lizard lunge. Maybe staying here, maybe adding a bind. Get that shoulder deep enough. And we'll release. The hands come to frame that foot. That back knee comes down to the mat. Ourselves onto our forearms, framing that foot. This hip should feel very open here. And come up onto our hands, wiggle that foot in to a pigeon. And this time bending this left foot behind us for our deer pose. This is our swastikasana. Trying to keep a right angle between both legs and both knees. So from the side, that looks like that. We can start with our hands in front of us and wiggle them as far forwards as they'll go. As we bow. And we'll walk our hands over to the right. Seeing if you can see your left foot.
To the left, left.
You see your left foot on the right when you walk to the right.
Yeah.
That's what you're looking for. Maybe you can reach for that foot, or at least reach to see it. And take a deep breath here into the twist. And then we'll release. Walk our arms around. And then we'll walk over to the left. And see if you can bring the right elbow to the inside of the right foot as you look to the left. Yeah, there you go. Now bring your elbow to the inside of the foot. You can always just stay here in a crescent too, if that's better for you. So you can get that elbow onto the. There we go. That looks good. Hands to our heart. Find our prayer as we look up. We'll exhale and release. Bring your hands to the mat in front of us. Bring the left leg out long as we come onto our toes. And step that right foot back into our dog. Patting out those feet. Lifting the left leg tall. And stepping it forwards between our hands. Finding our side angle pose. The arm and the shoulder on the inside of the foot. Let's bring both of our hands down as we bow into our lizard. Finding the bind, or just a lizard, whichever works for your level of practice. As we're opening the shoulder and that hip. Try to bring that right hip forwards and in line with the left. Come onto the forearms, framing the foot. Any variation of our lizard lunge. Or letting that hip open in the third direction. That upward motion. And we'll unbind the shoulder, bringing our hands in front of our toes as we wiggle that foot in for a pigeon. Come to sit on that hip and that right foot behind us. Bend the knee, like we did in our pigeon, and bring that inside of the foot down to the mat for our swastikasana. Our deer pose. Lifting up tall. And walking our hands as far forwards. And then like a clock. Walking your hands all the way to the left to see your right foot on your left. So if you can see it, can you grab it? Very good. Exhale into the twist. Inhale, back to center. Slowly walking our way back. Find ourselves forwards. Bowing over that leg. Walking our hands to the right. As we cross that left elbow into the left foot. Finding our prayer twist. Exhale into the twist as we look up. And inhale to release. Bringing those hands out in front of us. Bring that back leg long and tucking those toes. Our hands come beneath the shoulders. We step that left foot back, finding our dog. And we'll walk our feet between the hands and come to a seat. For our seated postures and our cool down, starting with our Baddha Konasana. This should be particularly easy today after all these hip openers. Bring our two fingers to hook the big toes. Use the leg muscles to pull those legs flat. Maybe rolling the calves forwards and the thighs back. And hook our big toes. Try to open the feet. Try to get all 10 toenails down to the mat. I can get about 8. Lifting up with the heart and with a flat back, keeping the back as flat as possible, we'll bow. Exhaling into the bow. And inhaling back up to center. Sitting tall. A long spine. And this time we'll bow and we can arch the back like a cat pose, trying to bring the nose between your toes. Inhaling back up to center. Our hands can come to the knees and push them together gently as we can roll onto our back and find our happy baby. Bring the tailbone to root down to the mat. Knees to just beneath the armpits as we release those hips. Like one hip and then the other. And those legs open. We're going to release the left leg out long. Kick that right foot all the way up. The right hand on the foot. Doesn't have to be totally straight. A little bend in the leg is okay. The left arm comes out to the left, keeping both shoulders rooted down You bring that right foot out to the right, trying to keep your left hip rooted into the mat. Don't go far enough that the left hip lifts up. Keep it flat. As you're flexing the left foot. Our supine Padangusthasana. Let's lift that foot back up to center. And release. Bringing that foot long. The left hand comes to the left foot. Flexing that right foot as you bring the right foot out long. The left foot comes up overhead. Little bend in the knee is okay. Right arm comes out to the right. Keeping that right hip rooted in the left foot out to the left. Only go as far as you can go while both sides of the shoulders and both hips stay flat and squared with the mat. Inhale, back to center. Both of our knees into our chest. We'll bring our knees to hide the ears pose. Finding our last forward fold. Bring our toes to the floor in front of us. Our hands to the lower back. And then letting the spine grow flat, vertebrae by vertebrae, as you release. And roll your back out into our Savasana. Moving one vertebrae at a time. Noticing how calm and quiet the mind has become. Noticing every breath of air bringing oxygen and nutrients to nourish your heart. And feel yourself growing stronger, more present, more aware, more capable with every beat of your heart growing stronger. Notice that blood bringing that oxygen through every muscle and tendon you have worked today. Bringing your intention with it. An intention to be here, to be present.
And bring your awareness to your fingers and toes. Begin to wiggle them. You can bring your knees into your chest. Give yourself a hug. Rocking side to side, left to right. Rolling over onto the right side body. Feeling yourself renewed, reborn, and refreshed in this moment. And pushing yourself up into a seated position with your hands at your heart, your eyes closed. You should be proud of yourselves for taking this time to step onto the mat and join in this practice of yogasana. I'm so grateful to each of you for practicing with me today. The love and light in me honors that love and light in all of you. Namaste.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.